Hey, I'm Miles. I'm 24, living in a cramped little apartment on the west side of Chicago. It's nothing fancy, a single bedroom with creaky floorboards and a window that sticks every time it rains. But it's mine. I work at an electronics store downtown, one of those spots where folks come in for cheap earbuds or to argue about why their laptop won't charge anymore. It's not glamorous, but it covers the bills, keeps me fed, and lets me stash a bit away for something bigger someday. Maybe a nicer place. Maybe a trip somewhere warm. I haven't figured it out yet. Most days, I don't dwell on it. Life's been straightforward lately, almost on autopilot. Mornings start with a black coffee, 1 sugar, from the corner deli. I can't stand those overpriced lattes. Afternoons, I'm at the store, restocking shelves or explaining to someone why their phone battery drains in 2 hours. Evenings, I'm either crashed on my couch with Netflix or over at my best friend Garrett's, grinding video games until one of us rage quits. Garrett and I go way back to high school, back when we'd sneak into arcades with quarters swiped from couch cushions. He's 24 too, works at a warehouse, and still lives with his mom in a tidy house in one of those quiet Chicago neighborhoods where the lawns are always mowed and the streetlights hum at night. I don't have some epic tale to tell about myself. A few flings here and there, nothing serious. Some girls from college, one from a dating app who ghosted me after 3 weeks. I've always felt pretty ordinary, not the type who turns heads or makes big plans. Just Miles, the guy who shows up, does the job, and doesn't rock the boat. Maybe that's why I love hanging with Garrett so much. He's the same way, easygoing, no drama. We just get each other. That afternoon started like any other. It was a chilly, gray Saturday, the kind of Chicago fall day where the wind cuts right through your jacket, no matter how thick it is. Garrett swung by after his shift, still in his warehouse uniform, smelling faintly of cardboard and motor oil. We were deep into a racing game, trading jabs and cracking up, when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, groaned, and said he had to bolt for a date he'd nearly forgotten. Grabbing his jacket, he yelled over his shoulder, "Hey! If you spot my phone lying around, shoot me a text." Yeah, right. He loses that thing constantly. I laughed, called him an idiot, and waved him off. Once he was gone, I started cleaning up the mess we'd made. Empty chip bags, a couple of soda cans. That's when I saw it half buried under a couch cushion. A sleek black iPhone in a fancy leather case that looked way too upscale for Garrett's usual beat-up style. I picked it up, figuring it was his, but something felt off. The case was soft, expensive, with a faint hint of lavender. Not Garrett at all. Then it hit me his mom, Nora, had stopped by a few days earlier with leftovers from one of her famous Sunday dinners. She must have left it behind. Nora's in her mid-40s, I think. You wouldn't guess it from how she carries herself. She's been single since Garrett's dad bailed when he was a kid, raising him solo while building her freelance interior design gig. I've known her since high school, back when Garrett and I started hanging out. She's always been cool, somehow. Not like those moms who hover or grill you with questions. She's always juggling projects for swanky condos downtown. I've seen her 100 times over the years, dropping off pizza during our late-night study sessions or laughing at Garrett's lame jokes around their kitchen table. She's got this quiet confidence, like she knows exactly who she is and doesn't need to prove it. Dark hair, sharp eyes, always dressed simple but sharp, like she stepped out of a magazine without trying. I turned the phone over in my hand, debating whether to text Garrett or wait it out. That's when it vibrated, the screen lighting up. I wasn't trying to snoop, but my thumb brushed the display, and there it was. A photo. Not a selfie. Not some casual snap. It was Nora, standing in soft light, wearing a black dress that hugged her curves just right. Her head tilted slightly, eyes locked on the lens with that confident, deep gaze like a secret she wasn't afraid to share. It wasn't indecent. Not like that. But it was intimate, like something you'd send to someone you trust, someone who gets it. My breath caught. I stared longer than I should have. My heart did this weird thud. This wasn't the Nora I knew, the mom who whipped up lasagna and asked if I'd done my laundry. This was a woman I'd never seen before, one carrying a whole world I hadn't noticed. I locked the screen fast, like I'd been caught stealing. My face burned. I set the phone on the coffee table, but my mind raced a mile a minute. Why did she have that photo? Who was it for? And why the hell was I still thinking about it? I tried to shake it off, grabbed a soda from the fridge, and sank back down, staring at the paused game on TV. But that image stuck with me like it had burned right into my brain. Nora wasn't just Garrett's mom anymore. She was something else. Something I couldn't quite name. Then came a knock at the door, sharp and quick, like the person knew exactly why they were there. I stood, heart still pounding, and crossed the room to open it. I swung the door wide, and there she was, Nora. She stood on the threshold, dark hair pulled into a loose bun, a few strands catching the late afternoon light. She had on a simple gray sweater over jeans. Nothing flashy, but the way she held herself, one hand in her pocket, the other on the doorframe, made her look like she belonged anywhere she chose. The Chicago wind tugged at her sleeve, and I caught a whiff of her scent. Something warm, like vanilla and cedar. My grip tightened on the knob, and for a second, I forgot how to speak. "Hey, Miles," she said, her voice steady but soft, like she was trying not to startle me. Her eyes flicked to the iPhone in my hand, and a small, knowing smile curved her lips. "I think you've got something of mine." I swallowed hard, throat dry. The phone felt heavier now, like it carried the weight of that photo I wasn't supposed to see. I held it out, my fingers grazing the leather case. "Yeah. I found it under the couch. Thought it was yours." My voice came out rougher than I meant, and I felt my face heat up. I hoped she couldn't tell how much that image had rattled me. She took it, her fingers brushing mine for half a second, enough to spike my pulse. She didn't check the screen or say anything right away. Instead, she tilted her head, studying me like she was reading something in my face. "Thanks for keeping it safe," she said, slipping it into her pocket. Then, after a beat, she added, "You saw the photo, didn't you?" I froze. My first instinct was to lie, to shrug it off like I hadn't noticed. But her eyes held mine, sharp and unflinching, like she already knew the truth. Lying to Nora? That'd be like lying to someone who sees right through you. So I nodded, just once, barely. "Yeah, I didn't mean to. It just popped up." Her smile didn't fade, but it shifted, less playful, more thoughtful. She stepped inside without waiting for an invite, brushing past me into my tiny living room. The space felt smaller with her in it, like she brought an energy that filled the corners. She turned, leaning against the back of the couch. "I'm not mad, Miles. I'm not even embarrassed." Her voice was calm, almost teasing, but there was something deeper underneath, something I couldn't quite pin down. "It's just a photo. A reminder to myself that I'm still me, you know? After all of it." I nodded again, not trusting myself to say anything smart. I knew bits of her story from Garrett. Her ex-husband left when he was 5, leaving her to raise him alone while scraping together her design career. She'd always seemed unbreakable, the kind of person who could handle anything. But watching her talk about that photo now, I caught a glimpse of something else. Someone who'd fought hard to hold on to herself. "It was nice," I said, cringing inside at how dumb it sounded. "Nice? Really?" But she didn't laugh or roll her eyes. Instead, she arched a brow, her smile widening just a touch. "Nice, huh? That's one way to put it." I rubbed the back of my neck, trying to shake off the awkwardness. "I mean, you looked confident, like you knew exactly who you are." I'm not sure where those words came from, but they felt true. That photo wasn't just about how she looked. It was about her owning every part of herself, scars and all. Nora's eyes softened, and for a moment, she said nothing. The hum of the city outside cars rumbling by, a distant siren filled the quiet. Then she spoke, her voice lower now. "You're the first person to see that photo, Miles. And I don't know why, but I'm not sorry it was you." My heart did that weird thud again. I wanted to ask what she meant, why she wasn't sorry, who it was even for. But before I could, she straightened, rubbing her hands like she was dusting off the moment. "Anyway, thanks for holding on to it," she said, patting her pocket where the phone Saturday. "I'd be lost without the thing." "No problem," I managed, my voice steadier now. She headed for the door, and I followed, feeling like I needed to say something, anything, to keep her there a second longer. But what? I wasn't even sure what was happening. She paused on the threshold, one hand on the frame, and glanced back over her shoulder. "You're a good guy, Miles." But the word guy didn't land like it used to, like I was just Garrett's buddy. It felt different, weightier, like she was seeing me for the first time. "See you around." "Yeah, see you," I said, watching her walk off into the gray Chicago dusk. The door clicked shut, and I stood there staring at it, my mind replaying her smile, her words, that photo. I didn't know what had just happened, but something had shifted. Like a door I never noticed had cracked open, letting in a sliver of light. I sank back onto the couch, trying to focus on the paused game on TV. But my head was elsewhere. Nora wasn't just Garrett's mom anymore. She was a woman who'd stood in my apartment, looked me in the eye, and said she wasn't sorry I'd seen her at her most real. And I had no idea what to do with that. 2 days after Nora came by to grab her phone, I couldn't shake her from my mind. That photo, her smile, the way she'd looked at me like she wasn't just Garrett's mom, but someone who saw me right back. It all looped in my head, like a song stuck on repeat. I clocked in at the electronics store, restocking shelves and nodding through customer gripes. But my thoughts kept drifting to her. I told myself it was nothing, just a weird blip in my routine. Then my phone buzzed with a text in the late afternoon while I was sweeping the back room. It was from an unknown number, but the message was crystal clear. "Miles, it's Nora. Hope I'm not bothering you. I'd like to invite you to dinner at my place tomorrow night." "Garrett's out for the weekend. 7 work?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. My first thought was Garrett. What would he think if he knew his mom was texting me? My second thought? Why, my heart was pounding like I'd sprinted a block. I typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I settled on. "Sounds good. I'll be there. 7's perfect." The next day, I spent every hour second-guessing myself. Was this just friendly? A thank you for finding her phone? Or something more? By the time I clocked out and drove to her place, my stomach was in knots. I parked my beat-up old Honda out front, the one with the dented fender I swear I'll fix someday. Her street was peaceful, lined with neat bungalows and ancient oaks, their leaves turning gold in the Chicago fall. Her house stood out. Clean lines, a small porch with a swing, warm light spilling from the windows. It smelled like rain and wood smoke. As I walked up the driveway, hands jammed in my jacket pockets to steady them, Nora opened the door before I could knock. She wore a simple navy sleeveless dress, hitting just above her knees, not flashy, but it fit her like it was made for her. Her hair fell in dark waves, catching the light, and she had barely any makeup on, just enough to make her eyes pop. "Miles, right on time," she said, her voice warm, like she'd been waiting. She stepped aside, gesturing me in. "I hope you're hungry." The house smelled like garlic and herbs, with a hint of something sweet, maybe dessert in the oven. The dining table was set for 2. Simple but thoughtful white plates, a bottle of red wine, a small candle flickering in the center. "I made pasta," she said, leading me to the kitchen where a pot simmered on the stove. "Nothing fancy, just my mom's old recipe. We can keep it casual." We sat down to eat, and at first, it flowed easy. She asked about my day at the store, laughed when I told her about a customer trying to return a laptop he'd clearly dropped in a pool. I asked about her work, and she told me about a downtown condo project, designing a living room for some tech guy who wanted minimalist, but not boring. It felt comfortable, like chatting with an old friend. But there was this undercurrent, something in how she'd pause before answering, or how her eyes lingered on me a beat longer than before. Then the talk turned. She poured us each a second glass of wine, leaned back in her chair, and said, "You know, Miles, I don't invite people over much when Garrett's not around." Her tone was light, but her eyes were serious, searching mine. "But after the other day, I don't know. I wanted to talk to you, really talk." I set down my fork, pulse picking up. "About what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She smiled, softer now, almost vulnerable. "About me, I guess. About how you hit 44 and realize you've spent so much time being someone's mom, someone's wife, someone's something, that you forget what it's like to just be you." She took a sip of wine, her fingers tracing the stem of the glass. "That photo you saw? I took it a while back, after my divorce. Not for anyone else. Just to remind myself, I'm still here. Still, Worth something. Does that make sense? I nodded, throat tight. Yeah, it does. I thought about my own life, how I felt like I was just going through the motions, waiting for something to make me feel alive. I get it. Sometimes I feel like I'm just existing, like nothing I do really matters. Her eyes met mine, and there was something raw in them, like she saw me in a way no one else had. You matter, Miles, she said softly. You don't need to do something huge to matter. Just showing up, being real. That's enough. The air felt thicker now, the candlelight casting soft shadows across her face. I wanted to say something, tell her she was more than enough, that I'd seen it in that photo, in how she carried herself. But I didn't. I just looked at her, and she looked back, and for a moment, it was like we were the only two people in the world. You have this way of looking at people, she said, breaking the silence. Like you really see them. That's rare, you know. Most folks don't look that closely. She paused, then added, I noticed it the other day when you handed back my phone. My face warmed, and I dropped my eyes to my plate, suddenly aware of how close our chairs were. I didn't mean to. I stammered, not sure what I was even trying to say. She laughed softly, the sound easing the tension. It's okay, Miles. I'm glad you saw me. Really saw me. We finished dinner, talking lighter stuff. Her favorite old movies, my obsession with retro video games. But that moment, her words, they stuck with me. When I left, she walked me to the door, her hand brushing my arm as she handed me my jacket. Thanks for coming, she said. It was nice. Really nice? Yeah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It was. I stepped out into the cool night, the street quiet except for the hum of crickets. Walking to my car, I could still feel her eyes on me, the weight of her words, the warmth of her touch. Something had shifted that night, and I wasn't sure I could go back to seeing her as just Garrett's mom. After that dinner at Nora's, I couldn't settle. The way she'd looked at me, how her words cut through the noise in my head, it lingered like a low hum I couldn't tune out. I fell back into my routine, shifts at the electronics store, restocking earbuds, dodging complaints about cracked screens. But it all felt off hollow, almost. I'd catch myself thinking of her mid-shift, her voice, her smile, the way she'd said I made her feel seen. I tried to push it down, telling myself it was just a moment, just a talk. She was Garrett's mom, for crying out loud my best friend's mom. But every time I saw her, that line blurred a little more. The weeks that followed were weird. I'd head to Garrett's for our usual hangouts, gaming, or binging old action flicks. But Nora was there in the background, moving through the house with that quiet confidence. She'd smile when I walked in, say something casual like, "Hey, Miles coffee?" But there was always a beat, a look that lingered too long, a brush of her hand when she passed me a mug, sending my pulse racing. I'd catch myself watching her, how she'd tuck a strand of hair behind her ear or laugh at one of Garrett's dumb jokes. And I'd force my eyes away because Garrett was right there, oblivious, rambling about work or some girl he'd met. One night, Garrett dropped something that hit me like ice water. We were sprawled on his couch, controllers in hand, when he said offhand, "Dude, Mom's been in a great mood lately. Like, weirdly happy. No clue what's up with her." He chuckled, not thinking twice, but my stomach twisted. I mumbled that it was cool, eyes glued to the screen, but my mind raced. Was it me? Was I reading too much into everything? Or did she feel this pull too? I didn't see her alone after the dinner, and part of me was relieved. It was easier to keep things normal with Garrett around, pretend nothing had changed. But another part of me, the bigger part, wanted to see her again. Talk like we had that night. Figure out what this was. I kept my phone close, half hoping for another text, but none came. Maybe she'd thought better of it. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Then came the rain. It was a Friday, the kind of Chicago afternoon where the sky cracks open, dumping sheets of water that turn streets into rivers. I was at home, scrolling my phone, when a text from Garrett popped up. "Yo, heading to Grandpa's for a few days. He's not doing great. Can you drop off that game controller you borrowed? Mom's home." My heart did that familiar thud. I stared at the message, rain hammering my window. It was just a quick errand, I told myself. Drop the controller, say hi, leave, No big deal. I grabbed it, slipped it into a plastic bag to shield it, and threw on a jacket. By the time I pulled up to Nora's, I was soaked, my sneakers squelching with every step. The street was hushed, the downpour muffling everything but the steady beat on my hood. I rang the bell, expecting Garrett's usual yell to come in, but the door opened, and it was Nora. She stood there in an oversized sweater and leggings, hair tied back, a few damp strands clinging to her neck like she'd been caught in the rain too. Her eyes widened for a split second, then softened. "Miles," she said, her voice warm against the chill. "You're drenched. Come in. No sense standing out there." I hesitated, water dripping onto her porch, but her smile pulled me forward. "Just dropping this off," I said, holding up the bag with the controller. Garrett asked. She took it, set it on a side table, then tilted her head. "You're not in a rush, are you? I'm baking apple pie. Stay a bit. Dry off. It's miserable out there." I should have said no, should have made an excuse and bolted, but I didn't. I stepped inside, the warmth of her house wrapping around me like a blanket. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and sugar, the oven humming softly. She handed me a towel, and I wiped the rain from my face, hands shaking. Not from the cold, but from being this close to her again. We sat at the kitchen counter, a warm slice of pie between us. The rain pounded outside, a steady rhythm that turned the house into its own little world. At first, we talked about nothing, the lousy weather, how Garrett always forgot everything. But then she leaned back, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug, and her voice dropped lower. "You know, Miles, I've been thinking about starting over. A new chapter. At my age, everyone says it's too late that you just settle in. But I don't want to settle." Her words hit something deep in me. I thought about my life coasting along, waiting for something to happen. "I get that," I said quietly. "Sometimes I feel stuck, like I'm going nowhere. But you make it seem possible, like it's not too late." She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, and for a moment, the air crackled. "What if someone believed in you?" I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "Really believed? Would that change things?" She didn't answer right away. The rain filled the silence, a soft rumble against the windows. Then she leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "That person? They'd be the luckiest thing to happen to me in a long time." My heart hammered so loud I thought she could hear it. We were close now, close enough to see the gold flecks in her eyes, the fine lines at the corners that made her more real. I wanted to reach out, close the gap, but I held back. Not yet. The moment hung there, heavy and fragile, like it could shatter with one wrong move. "I should head out," I said finally, standing, my voice thick. "Rain's not letting up." "Stay a little longer," she said, not pleading. Just calm, like she meant it. "Just till it eases." I nodded, sinking back down, hands gripping the counter's edge. The rain kept falling, and deep down, I knew I wasn't just waiting out the storm. I left Nora's that rainy evening with my heart racing, the taste of apple pie still on my tongue. The downpour had eased to a drizzle, but I barely noticed as I trudged to my car, sneakers still squishing from the earlier soak. Her words echoed in my head. That person? They'd be the luckiest thing to happen to me in a long time. I could still see the way she'd looked at me, eyes soft but steady, like she was daring me to believe her. I did. God, I did. But driving back to my apartment, Chicago's streets gleaming under streetlights, doubt crept in. She was Garrett's mom, my best friend's mom. What the hell was I doing? The days after were quiet. Too quiet. No word from Nora, and I didn't text her either. Part of me was scared of crossing a line we couldn't uncross, scared of what Garrett would think if he ever found out. I punched through my shifts at the store, ringing up customers and untangling headphone cords. But my mind wandered. Every phone buzz popped my chest, hoping it was her, but it was always Garrett or a work email. He got back from his grandpa's, and we hung out like normal gaming at his place, cracking up over stupid memes. But every time I stepped into that house, I felt her presence, even if she wasn't around. The kitchen still faintly smelled like her baking, and I'd catch myself glancing at the counter where we'd sat, talking like the world outside didn't exist. One afternoon, a week after that rainy night, I was at Garrett's, slumped on his couch while he vented about his boss. Nora was home, padding softly across the hardwood. She passed through with a laundry basket, flashed me a quick smile, nothing more than her usual "Hey, Miles," and kept going. But that smile, brief as it was, hit me like a jolt. It wasn't just friendly. It was knowing like we shared a secret we hadn't named. Garrett didn't notice, too wrapped up in his story. But I held my breath the whole time she was in the room. I kept waiting for something to give. Another text from her, another moment like in her kitchen. But it didn't come. Maybe she was pulling back, rethinking it all. Maybe I'd misread everything. I started wondering if I'd imagined the weight of her words, the way her eyes had held mine. But then I'd remember the photo, the dinner, the pie, and I knew it wasn't all in my head. Something had passed between us. Something real. Even if we hadn't acted on it. It was another rainy day. Chicago's got a knack for that when things came to a head. I was at Garrett's to return a game disc he'd lent me. He'd run out for groceries, and I almost turned back when I saw his car wasn't in the driveway. But I knocked anyway, figuring I'd leave the disc and go. Nora answered, hair down, in a soft green sweater that somehow made her eyes glow. "Miles," she said, voice warm but surprised. "Wasn't expecting you. Garrett's not here." "I know," I said, holding up the disc. "Just dropping this off." My voice sounded too casual, like I was trying to convince myself it was no big deal. She stepped aside, waving me in. "Come in for a sec. No need to stand in the rain." I paused, but the drizzle was picking up, and the warmth of her house was too inviting. I stepped inside, wiping my shoes on the mat. The place was still, just the gentle patter of rain on the panes. She took the disc, set it on a side table, then turned to me. "Coffee?" I was about to make some. I nodded more to buy time than anything. We ended up in the kitchen again, her pouring while I leaned against the counter, the same spot where we'd shared that pie. The air felt different this time. Charged, like we both knew we were tiptoeing around something. She handed me a mug, her fingers grazing mine, and I felt that familiar spark one I couldn't ignore. "Miles," she said, voice low. "I've been thinking about the other night, about what we talked about." She paused, staring into her coffee like it held answers. "I meant what I said about starting over, about wanting to feel alive again. But I wonder if I'm being fair to you." "Fair?" I asked, throat tight. "What do you mean?" She looked up, eyes meeting mine. "You're young. You're Garrett's friend. Me. I'm in my mid-40s, Miles. I've got a whole life behind me. Mistakes. Scars. All of it. I don't want to drag you into something messy." I set my mug down, my hands steady now. "You're not dragging me anywhere," I said. "I'm here because I want to be. Because around you I feel, I don't know, like more than the guys slinging phone chargers. Like I matter." Her face softened, and for a moment, she said nothing. The rain was heavier now, drumming steady on the roof. Then she stepped closer, not touching, but near enough that I felt her warmth. "You do matter," she said, voice barely there. And that scares me a little, because I haven't felt like this in a long time. I wanted to touch her, bridge that space between us, but I didn't. Not out of fear, but because this moment, raw and honest, was enough. "It scares me too," I admitted, "but it's the good kind of scared." She smiled, a real one, reaching her eyes. "You're braver than you think, Miles." When I left, she walked me to the door, her hand brushing my arm as she handed me my jacket. "Thanks for making me feel like I'm still here," she said, voice soft but sure. "Like I still count." "You don't need me for that," I said, holding her gaze. "But I'm glad you feel it." She laughed, a quiet sound that felt like a gift. "You're something special, Miles." I stepped out into the rain, the chill biting my skin, but I didn't care. Each step felt heavier, like I was walking away from something I wasn't ready to let go. I didn't know where this was headed, if it was headed anywhere. But driving home, the city blurring through my wet windshield, one thing I knew for sure. Nora had seen me, really seen me, and I'd seen her too. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. In the quiet grind of everyday life, where routines wrap around us like a worn-out coat, sometimes a single glance, a fleeting moment reveals someone's true core. Take my story. Just an ordinary guy like me, picking up a forgotten phone and stumbling on a photo of Nora. Not the protective mom of my best friend, but a woman alive with secrets and quiet strength. That image, caught in the glow of a lonely evening, wasn't a tease. It was a silent call. I'm still here whole, despite the scars from time and lost loves, and in that stolen look, I didn't see a forbidden line. I saw a soul inviting me to look past the labels mom, friend, familiar shadow. Isn't that the pulse of life? That hard-won lesson? Dare to truly see someone, beyond the masks we all wear. Because when we do, we uncover ourselves. At her age, Nora rediscovers her worth, not in the world's applause, but in the honest mirror of a real gaze. Me, stuck in my anonymous sales gig, feels for the first time like I count, like I exist beyond the cold glow of store shelves. It's the raw thrill of those connections. They terrify us, make us doubt, but they set us free. They remind us life isn't a straight, certain path. It's a winding trail where every encounter can spark something new. Picture this. What if, today, you offered that gaze to someone, to a loved one, a stranger, even your own reflection? You might heal hidden loneliness, reignite faded fires, and find that real strength lives in shared vulnerability. This isn't just a tale, it's a call to the heart. See, and let yourself be seen. Let these words echo in you, like autumn rain washing away the doubts. And now, folks, drop in the comments. Who's that one person who truly saw you, and how did it reshape your world? Your stories fuel me. They bind us. If this hit home, subscribe for more dives into what makes us real. Together, let's nurture those game-changing looks. Catch you soon with Feeling.